The main theme in Jekyll and Hyde is that of the dual nature of humanity, and it's a theme we see everywhere in the text. In a chapter on dreams, 1892, Robert Louis Stevenson explained how he had long been trying to write a story on this subject, to find a body, a vehicle for that strong sense of man's double being which must at times come in upon and overwhelm the mind of every thinking creature. As Stevenson developed as a writer, he continually returned to the idea that a human is not simply one, but consists of multiple personalities or mindsets that constantly battle with each other. Stevenson wrote letters to friends about his childhood spent ill in bed, suffering from dangerous fevers. It was at this time, he says, that he really became aware of another person, another consciousness within him. He called the two myself and the other fellow. The other fellow, he said, was careless, reckless and irrational. Here, of course, we can draw parallels with the two characters, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, the theme of duality is presented in the plot itself, with the two characters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde found to be one and the same person. Today, even a first-time reader is likely to know about this plot twist, but at the time the novella was written, we must not underestimate the shock that this revelation created. Jekyll refers to man's dual nature in chapter 10, explaining how all human beings are commingled out of good and evil. However, rather than simply analyse the plot itself, you might like to analyse how Stevenson presents the theme of duality through his use of genre, setting and language. As Anne Stiles explains in Popular Fiction and Brain Science in the late 19th century, the novella conforms to the dual opposing genres of Gothic fiction and scientific journal. It is Gothic in its use of monsters, horror, death, nighttime settings, ominous weather and inexplicable events. However, the text mirrors a scientific journal in the way that the first 8 chapters employ a seemingly dispassionate third-person narrative voice, and the concrete supplementary evidence presented at the end, the letters from Lanyon and Jekyll, mirrors the supplementary additions of information placed at the end of a scientific case study. The key point is that these two genres are opposed to each other. The Gothic aims to create fear and mystery, whilst the scientific journal aims to offer a rational explanation. Through conforming to the generic expectations of two seemingly opposed genres, Stevenson presents his theme on the duality of humans and the opposition of the good and bad sides within us all. Stevenson's choice to set the novella in London can also be seen to represent the theme of duality. The 1800s in Britain was a time of great change. One of the most challenging things for the established upper classes in Victorian society was the influx of people viewed as working class or lower class into the big cities of Britain. They were coming in search of work and housing, but the cities of the time, especially London, were quite unprepared for them. The sudden increase in numbers made the upper classes nervous. They were clearly outnumbered, and they began to create areas of these cities where they would not go, and other areas where they would socialise. This division of the city into no-go areas was interesting because it created an other in London specifically. Rich people tended to live in the West, and stories of debauchery and crime in places like the East End and Soho, where Hyde has his lodgings, were both shocking and fascinating to them. London, it can be said, had a dual personality of two opposing sides, which of course is a key theme in this novella. As well as the general setting of London, many of the specific settings in the novella contain contrast, again to symbolise the contrasting natures of Jekyll and Hyde. A number of examples of this are explained in detail in the chapter on setting in my revision guide, which is linked in the description, but here let's just focus on one example. In the opening chapter of the novella, we read a positive description of a street, which, with its freshly painted shutters, well-polished brasses and general cleanliness and gaiety of note, instantly caught and pleased the eye of the passenger. The tone then shifts as we read about Jekyll's laboratory door. 2 doors from one corner, on the left hand going east, the line was broken by the entry of a court, and just at that point a certain sinister block of building thrust forwards its gable into the street. This contrast of setting from positive to negative is a technique we find throughout the text. Once again, it is used to symbolise the contrasting opposition found in the duality of humanity. On a number of occasions, Stevenson's use of language contains contrast. Perhaps the most notable example is found when Enfield describes how Hyde trampled calmly over the young girl in the novella's opening chapter. This quotation is an example of an oxymoron, a figure of speech using seemingly contradictory words. The word trampled, with its connotations of rough and careless action, are opposed to the connotations of the adverb calmly, and this opposition of language again reflects the opposition of nature found in the characters of Jekyll and Hyde, and also in Stevenson's beliefs about the dual nature of humans.